It is 6 o'clock on the east coast of the USA, and it says that I'm live, so let's do a quick mic check. Can you guys hear me? It looks like my sound levels are loud enough. Okay, everybody, hi, my name is Yvonne, and I started this Jelly Roll Club at a local quilt shop, and so it evolved, and during the big lockdown when everybody had to stay at home, we decided to go online, and 2 years ago, the Jelly Roll Club went virtual. So now the Jelly Roll Club is everywhere. All right, everybody, I have dropped the link in the chat for the gnome pattern, and it looks like this. It's the gnome for the holidays. You should have a little banner that's in reverse. The letters are in reverse because this is set up for Fusible, and you should have a gnome image that looks like this, and this is your image that you're going to trace. Are you guys ready? So the Jelly Roll Club really went online with the Gnome of the Month. That's when a bunch of people found us. And so I've decided that for the anniversary of the big gnome off, that we were going to do a holiday gnome. And so I'm going to make a bench pillow, and let's talk about that. So before we do anything else, let's go ahead and jump into the project, and let me show you what I've got. Okay, so the first question says, would there be an intersection with the presents where there would be a problem for it to go flat? And no, I'm going to talk to you guys about that. So the first thing that I did is I started tracing my images. And this is Pellon Wonder Under, so it may have a different name if you're in a different country. But this is Pellon 805, which is an ultra lightweight fusible. It does not have a lot of glue, just enough to do what we need to do. Okay, so how do I handle the overlap of the gifts? So when I trace my images, if you notice, there's a slight overlap of the gifts. And I'm going to show you how we handle that. So when I trace them, I lay this on the image, and you don't need a light box, you can use one. I leave markings for myself to show me where this gift is going to overlap the other item. And so I draw little dashed lines. This gift number 2, I traced it, and I did just a single dashed line to show me where that other gift is at. And if I wanted to, I could actually draw a second line like this to show me where that other present is going to overlap, and I can actually cut that out. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to need to do is you're going to need to trace all of your pieces. They're already reversed because I want Santa Gnome to drive his sleigh to the right. So Santa Gnome is facing left because I'm reverse imaging this guy. And so I've got tracings for my little trees, my hat, my nose. I'm going to make my arms a solid tan instead of a 2-part. And then I've got snow, a sleigh, some holly berries, and some shoes. And I'm making his beard one solid piece. Yes, it looks like a giant acorn. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want all of my texture to come from the fabric itself. And so I'm going to be talking about his beard and how to avoid haloing. And so let's get started. So the first thing you do is you just trace all of your pieces. And then this is a great project for, guess what? Jelly Roll scraps. I try to size my pieces so that most of them fit Jelly Roll scraps. This is a gray Jelly Roll scrap, and it fits my sleigh. So I simply take this guy. I'm going to heat up my iron really quick. And I leave some space between my fusible web and my other pieces. Just a little bit, not a lot. So you don't want to waste anything. Waste not, want not. And this is a great project for scrap. Save these little bits because you could use them for other things. If you're a collage quilter, you're going to want to save those little bits because you may want to put those on little bits of fabric. So just like you always do, you take all of these pieces and you fuse them on the wrong side of your fabric, which is why you do the reverse applique. And if you're new to the club, just say hi, tell us where you're from, and we're all going to get started here. And so I see a friend, hi, Michelle from England. And look at there. So this is a jelly roll strip, and so your sleigh should fit right on there. Let my iron get good and hot before I continue with that. And you're going to take all of these pieces and you're simply going to attach them all to the back of your fabric on the wrong side. I'm using a lot of scraps from my scrap basket for this particular project. So if you've been following along, you're going to be doing the plant lady with me. And so I had a bunch of greens left over from my plant lady project. And so you can just pick any of these greens and they can become your little trees. So you have 2 little trees. Right here you can make them the same or you can make them different, but they fit on one jelly roll strip or a scrap of a jelly roll strip. So maybe this right here looks like little bits of a tree, so I'm going to pick this one. And all of these little creatures are just born in my head, and then they become jelly roll projects. I'm a full-time high school teacher by day and crazy quilter by night. And I just want to thank you guys for joining me on my little quilty journey. Let's heat that up a little bit more. Usually about 10 to 15 seconds is a good amount of time. And then put this one on there. And the same thing, you just have to make sure that your paper backing becomes transparent. And once it becomes transparent, then you know that it's been heated enough. Some people like to press and press and press and press, and that's not necessarily a good thing. You can melt all the glue right off and then it won't stick. But yeah, these are all just leftover jelly roll strips from other projects. This is a little gray sleigh. And I have a couple little trees now. Don't lose your stuff. Things can get lost in the sewing room. So I'm going to use this little fabric. I don't know what it is. Looks like little lines, maybe tree stumps, and that's going to be my little trees. And you can label them if they're not obvious what your pieces are. I have his little hat already traced out. 2 little snow bundles. If you don't want to create snow with fabric, you can use felt and make it dimensional. So if you wanted to add little bits of snow that were felt, you could do that too. But this is going to be a bench pillow, and I'm going to talk about pillow construction in just a second. So let's get him out the door. So this is his hat. All right. I need a piece big enough for his hat. And so I'm going to look in my scrap bin and see what I have. This one is not quite big enough. Maybe, but no. And so I'll use that for a present. So that's cute enough for the present. But this one is just another scrap. And that one looks like it's big enough. And that'll make a nice hat. So that's a dyed fabric. And so you're just going to go into your scrap pile and you're going to pick all of those bits and pieces. I leave them all uncut like this, and then I just stick them in a basket, and I save all of my scrap by color. So for example, this is my red basket. And so I just keep all of my bits, little jelly roll scraps, strange bits and bobs, everything that's left, and I just kind of fold it. And when my basket is full, then it's time to do a red project. And so that's how I keep my scraps. I don't try to cut it all into predetermined pieces because it just becomes all too confusing. And so you just grab something out of the red bin like this. And guess what happens to this piece? Now this bit just gets folded in half and it goes in the red bin. And then next time I need a red scrap, I just dig it out. But there's some people that will try to get you to save all of your scraps in, you know, this size or that size. I cut them into 2.5-inch strips. That's why this is the Jelly Roll Club. Or if I can just leave them in big chunks, I do, because they're great for applique. And so the bigger the chunk, I like 5-inch squares. They go great with Jelly Roll strips. And I like 10-inch squares because they also go great with Jelly Roll strips. So anything that's multiple of 2.5 I like. Should I consider grain of fabric for little pieces? Not really, not for applique. There are times when you should consider grain, especially if you're sewing like half square triangles. You definitely want the bias on the inside and not on the outside. But if you're doing applique, especially if you're doing needle turn applique, working on the bias works in your favor because it helps you to turn those curves, especially if it's needle turned curvy applique. So for the most part, most precision piecing does require for you to pay attention to that grain, but applique does not. All right. So there we have, you can ask all the questions you want. There we have the little hat. And so there's part 1. We have the little trees, and we're going to keep building this little gnome. All right, so I have this, and I'm just cutting away. I've tried to adjust my microphone so that it's not too loud, but not overly sensitive. All right. So we have a beard to give Mr. Santa Gnome, Santa baby, right? So I just cut out this acorn, that is his beard, and we're going to put him on some curly, I want fabric that looks like curly hairs. So I'm going to look in my little stash of fabric over here and see if I can find something that kind of looks like curly hair. And I do have a little scrap here. And this is actually a charm pack, and look at that. It has like little curls. Can you guys see that? So that's going to be his beard. And you can use fabric on either side. Don't be afraid to use the wrong side if you think those lines are too much for his beard. You can always use the reverse side, and you can still see that. And so don't be afraid. Use whatever side of the fabric you feel like using. You paid for both sides, so you might as well use whatever side you want. All right, for this beard, I'm just going to go here so that I can use the least amount of fabric. I'm just going to kind of put him here at an angle like this, and then I'll have a little piece of leftover that I can use for the snow. So I'm going to give him his little curly beard, and then I'm going to come in and I'm going to save fabric, and I'm going to put the 2 little snow bits on the other side. And that gives me a 2-for-1. So I'm going to use the same fabric for those 2 little snow bits as I am for his beard. All right, I'm going to come in here and trim away all of the bits, and help yourself when you are appliquing, and get micro serrated scissors. There's lots of them out on the market. You can pick one that are your favorite, but micro serrated scissors I recommend for cutting all of these things because they don't slip, and because they don't slip in your fingers, then it makes cutting those curves a lot easier. Just makes your whole situation here easy. They grip the fabric, and you don't end up with raggedy edges. There's nothing worse than raggedy edges on an applique. And this one is kind of fiddly because you got to stick your hands in there. And you're just cutting away all of the stuff that overhangs that sleigh. Super easy. I stop at the corner always and pivot so that I don't cut into the next piece and I don't get anything that unravels on me. And when you're manipulating this, it's better to turn your fabric than to turn your wrist, because your wrist doesn't turn that way. To cut into inside corners, I use these little teeny tiny scissors. They're for embroidery, but they're itty bitty, sharp, sharp, sharp on the end, and they have a slight curve to them. And for those, I just pierce the middle, and I cut to the corner, and I stop, and I cut to the corner, and I stop, and I cut to the corner and stop. And that way I can cut away those sides by flipping them up and out of the way and just giving them a little trim like this. And I just think that that is easier than trying to cut around the square. Let me just go in here and stop at that next corner. And that just makes it easier. You can even flip them up like this towards you and cut them away. And I just find that cutting that way just makes it a lot easier. You're less likely to get little raggedy things in the corner like that one. I'm just trimming away. Like I said, just poke it in the center and go out to the corners. All right, so what have you guys been sewing out there? Tell me what you've been doing while I work on this. Do you guys have any questions? And look at this, you just flip it back, makes it easy. You stick your scissor in there, and it just works so much easier than trying to mess with cutting out those squares the other way. And I've done a lot of applique. If you want to save these little things, I don't know what you want them for, but maybe they could serve for something. They would be a good little bird beak, I don't know. I've been working on the Mystery Stars quilt that we're going to be working on. Every single month you're going to have a 12-inch star, and you're going to have a couple of baby stars that are going to be go along with it, and we're just going to build that quilt one star at a time. We're going to have 20 blocks to put together that consist of a large star and 2 baby stars. So if you have not looked at the handout for that, you should download it. It is on the website under Mystery Stars. If you look at the top, there's a little segment where it shows you what we're doing, different projects I've already done, and all of the patterns on my website are free. You don't have to sign up for a mailing list. I don't make you give me your firstborn child or say Rumpelstiltskin 3 times in order for me to share my projects with you. You could just go on my website and download them. All right, so somebody said, do you wash your fabric and can you wash jelly rolls? Absolutely, you can wash jelly rolls. The best way to wash jelly rolls is to take a little bin or a small bucket, and you can put some hot water in there and some retain, and then soak your strips in the retain. Then you pull them out after you swish them around and you rinse them well. You pull them out and you hang them, allow them to air dry. You pull them out and that's all. You can toss them in your dryer. But I just let them air dry and then I press them and use them. And especially if you have reds like this, you're going to want to check that, because they can bleed. And the last thing that you want to do is make a beautiful project just to have it bleed everywhere. All right, so then Santa Baby's beard is going to get cut like this. And I have given him more beard than he needs because some of this is going to get tucked under his hat. So Santa Baby's got a little beard like this. And actually Santa Baby has a name. His name is Cosmo. And Cosmo is named after my great-grandpa. So my great-grandpa was Cosmo Rabilan, so that's his name. His name is Cosmo, after my great-grandpa. I never met him, but he was a funny, creative guy, according to my dad. And so that's why this little guy is named Cosmo. All right. So there's a little bit of snow, right? And there's another little bit of snow, and I think they look pretty good. I picked this nice thick fabric because I didn't want haloing behind my snow. And I didn't want haloing behind the beard. This little snow bit has 2 drippies of snow. You can cut them out double or you can do single just like I did. So you can always come back and change your details if you want. You don't have to follow it exactly. Like I said, turn your fabric, not your fingers. It's so much easier. So there's the snow bits. There's the gnome hat. I like this solid because you're going to be able to see the thread squiggles that I'm going to do on there. I've got his nose, so I've got a little bit of batik here. This is a tea stained batik. And yes, you can tea stain your fabric. The fabric to set dyes in your fabric is Retain. People sometimes confuse it with Synthropol. Synthropol is what you use after you wash with Retain, and it's a soap that will also help your fabrics stay pretty. But Retain just sets the color completely. It prevents it from rinsing out, bleeding. It's a dye fixative. A lot of people will say, oh, well, don't bother washing, just use color catchers. But color catchers do exactly what they say they do. They catch the color. They don't prevent the bleed. And so color catchers are great if you did not wash your fabric and you want to prevent bleeding onto the white fabric. But if you really want 100% insurance that your fabrics are not going to bleed, then my suggestion is always to pre-wash, just because it prevents headaches from happening. All right, so I've got a nose and two little arms, and they're going to be the same tan that's been tea stained. I've been collecting scraps for a long time. If you don't have scraps, eventually, as long as you continue quilting, you will have scraps. It doesn't take long for them to stack up. There we go. Those are nice and stuck on there. And make sure that you're not sticking things to your woolly mat. This is my older mat. That's why I'm using this one, not my pretty new one. All right, so now I need gifts. I think I'm going to use this bright green for my gifts. Or maybe I just do a muted green. I have plenty of green. Like I said, I have them leftovers from the Plant Lady project. Maybe I'll use a muted green. A deep balsam green looks good. So this is a piece, and I'm going to stick gift number 1 on there. That's a little short gift. This particular piece is about 3 inches wide, or 3.5. Let me measure really quick. So it's 3.5 inches, and you need a little piece that's 3.5 inches wide by about 3.5 inches tall. So 3.5 by 3.5. So if you've got a scrap 3.5 by 3.5, that'll make gift number 1. And you'll have margin of error on there. So that's gift 1. Yes, scraps do multiply like rabbits, Inez. They do. They do. Don't panic about those scraps. You'll have plenty, and you'll be overrun by scraps. If you love scrap quilting, then you should always check out Bonnie Hunter's blog. She has free patterns for scrap lovers in there. And a lot of my projects are scrappy too. And so there you have it. Gift number 1 is like this because it will curve around the beard like this. So gift number 1 is curving around the beard. And so I've got a little excess. There we go. So gift number 1 will go this way, and he's sticking up. And so there's gift 1, and it doesn't take long. Save these scraps. These little pieces might be worth something. It's 2.5 inches wide by about 2.5 inches long, maybe 3, and those are great scraps. Don't waste those. Never waste your scraps, people. Fabric is expensive. All right, I have little trees. I'm going to make them a little bit bigger than the original pattern, just a hair, just because I want them to be a tiny bit bigger. And so I gave them just a tiny margin. So there's my trees that go on top of the gifts. And now I need gift number 2. And I also need, which I'm going to make out of this red fabric, I also need a couple of shoes and some holly berries. And the holly berries will get attached with buttons, so I'm not going to bother cutting out little microscopic little things. Life is too short. Unless you really want to hand embroider a couple of little tiny berries, you can save yourself the trouble. You can even draw them on there with a fabric marker if you get real lazy. Why not, right? I mean, it's your pillow. All right, so now that I've got all these little bits and pieces trimmed up, I need some shoes, so I'm going to use black. I have this random scrap that I'm not a fan of, so I'm going to use the wrong side, and I'm going to put my shoes on there. And so this is going to be to the outside, so I'm going to press them right on that cheetah print black. I don't know why I have a cheetah print fabric, but it's going to be a cheetah print. Yes, color catchers do work for fabric that bleeds. So if you have fabric that you have not pre-treated with retain, you definitely want to grab a color catcher or two and test that out. I have a whole box of color catchers, but I've not used them yet. I ordered them, but since I pre-wash all my fabric, I haven't had a need for it. I actually used it for my blue jeans, is what I used my color catchers for recently. But I haven't used them with any of my quilts yet. All right, these things that look like beans are his little feet. And so I just spin them around. There's one foot that's bigger and one foot that's smaller, and they're supposed to be that way. Holly berries can be cut out of this fabric here, which is the little fabric that I used for his present. And like I said, don't waste those little scraps. They're good for stuff like this. All right, so now I can get rid of all my scraps. I wish my scrap fairy would fold and sort all my things. Does anyone have one of those at home, a scrap fairy? I don't have one. I'd like one though. Whoever invents a little scrap fairy that can clean up all my messes, I would love you forever. All right, since there is no scrap fairy, I guess that's just going to be me. All right, the little nose, ready to go. The little hands, ready to go. And like I said, I'm not going to put sleeves on him. This Santa, Cosmo Santa, is having hot flashes, so he's just going to be like this. He's going to have arms like this. I just made him one solid piece just to make my life easier, because I'm not in the mood to put clothes on him. He's just going to be semi-nude, I guess. Don't tell Mrs. Claus. All right. So I'm getting all of my little bits together, right? I need one more gift. It needs to be the red one. And that's going to go on the wrong side. Always give it a little press. Stick it on the spot that will use the least amount of fabric, always. Once it's transparent and you can see through there, then you know that it's ready. And you can save that bit right in your scrap bin. So somebody tried to download the pattern for this one here. It should already be linked at the top. All right, so let me grab this. And so this is the next present. And that goes with this one, just like this. So this goes behind this one like this. And that's how the two little presents go. So the two little presents go on the sleigh, and then this is curved to allow for him to nest. And so that's how we're going to put those little presents on the sleigh. All right, one more little tool here, one more little thing, and then we are ready to go. All right, so this is your guy, and you saw how long it took me to get all these little pieces together. It doesn't take long, 6:30, so you can probably put this little guy together in about an hour if you work diligently. Maybe 2 if you're taking your time and you're listening to Christmas carols and goofing around like I like to do. All right, so there are all my pieces. I have 2 gifts, 2 trees, 2 bits of snow, 2 arms. I need clothing for him, maybe. And so in order to put my clothes on him, I'm going to grab this right here. And it looks like his clothes are hiding, so his shoes, I could probably get away with putting 2 little bits of red behind his hands. And so what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to literally take 2 little bits of red. I'm going to take a little bit of this. And I don't even need to trace it because it's going to be a little tiny piece. I'm going to cut a square that's like 2 inches by 2 inches. And I'm going to press it onto some Fusible. And then I'm just going to use that as filler to make sure that I have a little Santa gnome that doesn't look like his head is floating in the air, right? And so that's all I really need is this right here. And that's his body, and I'm going to go ahead and write that so I don't forget that that is his body. All right, so now that I have all of his bits cut out, his nose, his beard, his hat, the snow piles, the gifts, this will be on there with thread. And all of these little squiggles are going to be thread, and these lines are going to be thread. And so let me show you how we do that. But first, let's talk about what this is. This is a bench pillow. And my bench pillow that I'm using, or a lumbar pillow, whatever you want to call it, is one of these prefabbed inserts, right? And so the prefab insert that I'm using is a 12 inch by 15 inch. That's why I said you need a 12 by 30 piece of batting. And so this is 15 inches. My little pillow measures at 15, right at the seams, and 12. And so it's 12 down to the seam. And so that's why I'm using a piece of batting that's 12 inches by 30 inches, because I want enough batting for the front and back. But you don't have to, depending on your pillow, you could make him either bigger or smaller. If you want to have a big pillow, like a wider pillow that goes along a bench, then my suggestion is for you to download the bonus tree from last year's Gnome of the Month and use that to extend your pillow. So you would have this gnome going towards the tree, and then you would have this tree on the end. So if you wanted this to be a wide pillow, and you could put them on the end. So this fits very nicely on the end of this if you were going to put him on a big pillow, right? But you don't have to. This is only for those of you who have a much bigger pillow than what I'm working with, okay? All right, so let's get started. So on my background, I'm using this beautiful woven fabric that I got at my local quilt shop. And today was Small Business Saturday, so I made myself go to my local quilt shop. Yeah, I made myself. I love shopping at my local quilt store. So I went there and I found this beautiful hand-woven fabric. It's like beautiful. Look at this. Beautiful, beautiful fabric. And I'm going to be putting my gnome on this background. And so I just need to make sure that I have at least 12 inches. So I'm going to cut it bigger than what I need by 3. And so I know that I need at least 12. So I'm going to make this 15 inches wide so that I have plenty of wiggle room, so that I can trim that, so that I can quilt it, and I can do all of the things without worrying that it's not going to be the correct size. And so I'm just going to take this and I'm going to make sure that it's straight, straight, straight. Sometimes your fabric can be misaligned, and so you're just going to want to give yourself a little bit of wiggle room for that. So whenever I buy fabric, I always get fabric that's at least a half a yard more than what I'm going to need for whatever it is. And that's another way that you end up with lots and lots of scraps. Okay, so you've got this here, and I'm going to cut just with my scissor. Don't need a rotary cut anything. I'm just going to cut it nice and wide, and I'm giving myself a lot of margin of error, right? just going to trim that and move all this away. And so when I measure that, I know that I've got plenty of room to straighten that up and do what I need to do. These are lots and lots of layers of fabric. But if you want to, you can just trim these up. Use a humongous rotary cutter. The more layers of fabric, the bigger the rotary cutter you should use. I'm just straightening these edges out. Let me see if that cut through that. Not quite. And I'm just straightening that edge so that it's straight. Let me lay that out. Now it looks pretty good. Those edges are pretty straight, and so this is going to be my background for my gnome. I'm going to want to give him a good hard press because I want to find the center in both directions, and then I'm going to center my design. So I'm going to fold it in half, and then in half again, and that will allow me to center my gnome design in the middle of my available fabric. And so it's better to go big and then trim down. Okay. All right, friends, so there you have it. I've folded it into fourths. You can do it with your hands. You can give it a hard press. Either way, let me move all these little bits off. But I always like to find the center of my design. All right, where is the center of the gnome? So let me show you how to find the center of this guy. So anytime that you have a design, you will lay it out and you will measure the distance between the two widest points. And this guy he's about, I would say 8.5 inches, right? So 4 1/4. So somewhere right here along this edge of this hat is the center. And so you can measure 4 1/4 from that edge, just like this. And I'm going to kind of draw a line here. How about I use the correct side? So this is 4 1/4. I'm measuring here. And then I'm drawing a line just so I can kind of get an idea where his middle is. You can do it with a highlighter if you want. Just so you know kind of where his center is, like right there. And so that's the middle going that way. And then I'm going to look at this design and I say it is from the top of his head to here is about 7 1/4. So I'm going to do about 3 1/2 approximately. So I'm just going to lay this down. And 3 1/2 takes me to about there. And so I've got kind of like a bullseye, right? And so what I know now is that that bullseye is where I'm going to put, I'm just going to use a big Sharpie, is where I'm going to put the center of my gnome. So he's going to go right there, right? And so that bullseye is where I'm going to center my design. So now I'm going to press this guy really good, or really well. Pardon my English. And then I'm just going to press this. I like to spritz it with a little bit of water. And that will make sure that my little guy is centered where I want him. So I'm just going here. And I normally do not steam once I start, but I will press with a little bit of water before I start. And so that residual water that's in there kind of steams my my design. So I'm going to press him this way, fold him in half. And I'm going to press him all the way around. All right. So now that I've got him centered, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start placing my design where I want it. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to place my sleigh, because that's the first thing that I'm doing. He's the lowest level. And I'm going to put my sleigh, if you noticed on my design, this is in reverse order. We have 1, 2, and then in the middle of that second one, so I have 1, 2, and then in the middle of this one, I'm going to lay just like that. So this is, there we go. I'll lay it just like that, centered with my gnome. And the middle of my design is going to be that present. So I'm going to slide this down. So I know that from there to there, I have from the center to the bottom, I have about 3.5 inches. So from this center point, I'm going to measure 3.5 inches right there, and I'm going to take a pencil and I'm going to lightly mark like a tiny dot, and then I'm going to put my sleigh down here just like that. And that's going to give me the approximate location for that sleigh. And so there I have it. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to remove my paper, but I'm not going to stick it down until I know that that's exactly where I want all of my pieces. So I start by kind of laying out and marking my bits, and then after that, then I come in and I press them all down. So don't get ahead of yourself and start pressing, because you might regret it and think that doesn't look right, and then you have to go back and do that. So that's where I want it, right where that second one is. And so I know this is where I want it, so I'm going to pin him down. So I've got a couple of pins, and I'm just going to leave him right there. Now that I've got him pinned down, I'm going to start building my my little guy, and I'm going to build the next layer. So I want this present because it's in the back. So that present is in the background, right? The very end of the train. So this is going on the furthest corner of the sleigh to the right on the image, to the left on yours, because this is in reverse order. So you're always working in reverse, right? So this is at the end of the sleigh. So right here at the end of the sleigh, I'm going to slide that present right there. Then I have another present that's going to go in there. And it's this one, right? Gift number 2. And then gift number 2 is also going to get sliced. Just use a pin to notch that and open it. And gift number 2 is going to get tucked underneath there. And it's got a little bit of an overlap, so you're going to want to kind of play with that. The next thing that you have there is a little bit of snow. So you're going to want the biggest bunch of snow on that side. Goes over there. And you're going to want to pin these in place as you go. This is why I use my wool mat. It kind of holds everything in place. And that way, when I get to the end, I can just press one entire thing. You can sew as you go if you want to, or you can do it this way. The snow covers most of the intersection right here with the presents. So that's where we can put the snow. And put it right there. And like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's up to you. If you want that snow to have a split, which I might, you may want that snow split like this. I just come in and cut it, and there it is. And now that snow has a little slit. So now I'm holding my snow, and I love my wool mat for this. And now I'm going to build my gnome. So I'm going to build my gnome. I know that I have a little Christmas tree to add to the top of those gifts. I'm going to connect those with thread. And so these are going to be up here like this. I might even put one on top of each present. It's up to you. You can do whatever you want with these little Christmas trees. So snipping them down. And I'm just using another pin again. And you're just ripping that, breaking that paper so that it'll come off. That goes up here in the air. It has a little sister tree that lives with it. The two little sisters of the forest. I like that print. It makes it look like the little pine tree has needles. And like I said, you just take and pull that paper off and it comes right off. And the little tree trunks will be built with thread. So there's the two little trees. They're going on top. Now we got to build his beard and his head. And so he's going away from the presents. And the top of his hat is at the edge of that gift, like this. And so this gift has an excess. Remember I said there was extra there? So I can go ahead and remove that gift and remove the excess. Remember I said I had a little bit more, so I'm going to go ahead and just trim that, sliver trim that gift, and he's going that way now. So that gift has a little bit extra, and that's fine. I'm going to tuck him under here. You don't want to get too many layers in one spot because it will not lay flat. And so that was a great question. And so you can feel if it just has a single layer, then you're pretty good, in pretty good shape. You've got his little arms here. His little beard is going to go where it's overlapping that gift. Like this. You're going to have a shoe that sticks out. So I need my shoe. The shoe on the left is bigger than the shoe on the right, so you're going to want to make sure that that shoe goes under there. So you're going to tuck that shoe under the beard, just like this, just to show where he's sitting. And right now I don't need any clothing for the little gnome right there because his shoe is big, and so that covers it up. I have two hands, a left and a right. This is the hand on this side. And this is the hand on that side. And they blend in with the background, but they're very different. You can see them in person. I don't think you can see them on camera. And so there's one hand and there's the other. So his little hand is going to be sticking out like this. And this little arm is the one that's going to be sticking out on this side. All right, so now let's handle his body. In the design, he has a tiny bit of body that sticks out behind the shoes. So because I don't want to get a bunch of layers of fabric, I'm going to cut out a little rectangle on either side like this. And I'm just going to tuck a little rectangle of fabric back there. You don't need a lot. We need literally a tiny rectangle, and that will fill in the space between his hand and his shoe. You just need a little bit. And so I'm going to tuck a tiny bit of fabric right between his shoe and his arm right there. I'm just going to save myself the trouble, look at there, and I'm going to build his beard. So there's going to be his little hand sticking out that way, and then there's his clothing, because we do not want a naked claws. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. I'm going to cut out a little bit, a little rectangle of fabric, and that just saves yourself a lot of headaches. Just do it that way. If your pins are not sharp, they don't pierce this stuff. There you go. Nice sharp pin. Just do it. There we go. If your pins are sharp, you're in business. If your pins are not sharp, you're out of luck. So now that I've got this all peeled back, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to tuck a little bit of red. I'm going to stick his arm out. And if it's too long, then I can always move that. But I'm going to stick his little arm this way. And once I use thread and go around his hand will be more visible. And then I'm going to tuck his little shoe in that corner. And that's how you avoid having too many layers of everything on top of each other. So that little shoe goes there. So we have two little shoes. And this is a gray color. I don't know if you can see that. And these shoes are black. And I'm not liking the way this shoe looks. It's a little bit bigger than what I wanted. So I'm just going to trim that. And you'll be able to see as you play with your pieces. If you don't like the way something looks, just fix it. And there we have it. So now his little shoes are the size that I like. And his little face is there. And now I need his little nose and another piece of snow. And so this is how we built little man here. You nip his nose. I ended up with a little wart or something. And Cosmo does not have warts on his nose, so we got to get rid of that. And so there I have his nose. In the middle of his face. And his big hat. His floppy little Christmas cap going on there. His little nose will go up here, tucked in, because when I do my thread sketching, I'm going to put texture in his beard. And like I said, I'm going to go up here to the very edge of that, and I'm going to put this at the very edge so that all of these pieces won't have layers and layers and layers. There's also a little bit of snow and 2 holly berries, and I'm going to put those down before I press the entire thing. So there's a little bit of snow coming off of the sleigh in the front, just like this. If you don't want to put that little bit of snow, you don't have to. If you want to move the snow further back, if you want to move the snow down here, you can move the snow down here. But you can do whatever you want because this is your little gnome and no one's telling you what to do. This is your little guy. So I'm going to move that shoe there, and I'm going to put the snow maybe by his foot over here. What do you guys think? Should I move the snow to the middle, snow to the end? I can move the snow on top of his shoe. But either way, I've got my gnome. He's got a beard. He's looking pretty straight. I have a body. I have all the things that I need. And so now I can heat up my iron, and I'm going to give him a press. And when I press him, I'm going to lay a little bit of fabric on top of him. And the only reason I do that is because I don't want all of my pieces to move around. So I'm going to lay some fabric just like this. And in this case, I will use a little bit of steam to set that glue. And so I will spritz this with a mister just like that. And so now that that has steam, I can bring my iron over here and I can hold my iron on there without scorching it. Once I have that there, I can peel this off, and all of my bits have adhered to the background so that I can sew them in that section without getting smashed down. So sometimes if you put your iron straight on top, you get these haloing effects where there's an outline. You don't want that. Eventually this glue will wash out after you have laundered your piece, and then that glue will be gone, but that outline will stay. And so what I do is I always take another piece of fabric just like this, just plain white fabric, and then I lay it down on top of the next section, and then I spritz it with a tiny bit of water just like this, and then that heat and that steam will go through that pressing cloth, and it'll keep my pieces from mashing down and looking distorted. And I'm not putting any pressure on my iron at all. Does this make sense? Once I have the bottom adhered, I can peel it back, and I can feel that it has stuck on there. It's good and stuck. And now I do the next segment up here at the top. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take a little cloth about the width of my iron, and I'm going to lay it down. You can use a piece of muslin. You can use a piece of a t-shirt. You have a t-shirt or a little bit of white fabric, just like I do, so that you can see through it. That's the reason why I use white. And then I spritz it with my mister, and I allow that steam from the mist to go through, and that heats it up perfectly. And I love doing it this way, like I said, because it doesn't smash my images. And there you have it, friends. Now this little gnome is ready for some embellishment. In this case, the embellishment is going to be these little pieces of bunting. So I'm going to put a bunting that says joy. If you want to shrink these, you can. You can put them on the left or on the right. But when you have the bunting, I don't know if you can see that, they're in reverse. It says J-O-Y. So when you trace these, you can actually trace. If you don't have a lightbox, you can take a Sharpie for any of the images that I've given you, and you're going to take and you're going to trace them on this side like this with a Sharpie. So after you print, you're just going to trace like this. And you can go like this, and you'll be able to see the outline of each shape. And then you can see what your finished pieces are going to look like, because you can see them on the back if you trace them with a regular Sharpie. The same with this right here. If you want to look at what the individual pieces look like, you just trace with a Sharpie along the outside edge of every one of these pieces, and you're going to be able to see the outline on the back side. So you can see by going around each piece like this what it's going to look like on the other side. And then when you flip it over, guess what? You have your individual pieces if you want to do them this way. So if you want to see what the individual pieces look like and trace them, you can trace them like this. You can trace them with a light box like I did. But these are your pieces. And now this little guy is ready to be turned into a pillow. To make my pillow, I'm just going to layer him with some batting, and I'm going to quilt him up, and then I'm going to make the back of my pillow just using a, so this is 2 pieces, and I'm just going to use some Velcro to close him around my pillow form so that I can wash this. And so this is a pillow form that I bought at the store. It opens with a zipper, and it actually has stuffing already in it. And so this is my pillow. It's going to be 12 inches wide by 15 inches across the front. And so you decide what pillow you want. Oh, somebody said I didn't add the holly. You're right. I did not add the holly. Let me turn this alarm off. I did not add the holly because I'm going to wait until I quilt all of this, and then I'm going to add the holly on there with a couple of buttons. And so the holly will just go down here at the bottom, but I want to get this all quilted before I add the holly, and I might make my holly out of felt, just because I think I want some dimension to it. So if you want it to be dimensional like the snow or the holly, I think I'm going to make them out of felt, and then I'm going to put a button in the middle just so that they can have some dimension on my pillow. But you can see the little hands, how they're going to get quilted around, and you'll be able to see some dimension. So that's what I'm going to do next. But there you guys have it. There's the little Santa gnome. His name is Cosmo. Help yourself. Download the handout. and see what you can do with your little guy. All right, friends, it's 7 o'clock. It's time for me to get off of here. I'm going to start sewing this guy. It's going to take me a little while to sew around each of these things because I'm going to switch thread so that my thread matches, and then I'm going to be done. So yes, I think I'm going to do the little holly berries will be made out of felt. I think that'll make the pillow look cuter. The little stems to the trees will be made out of thread, so I'm going to stitch back and forth with some brown thread, but you have to have two little tree trunks like this that are skinny for your tree. And so that's it, friends. Super easy. Make yourself a little gnome, get it all stitched up, and I will be posting a picture when I get mine finished. But I love you guys. Here's another little gift to add to your closet. Like I said, if you want a last minute pillow, you can make this a square. You can turn this into a table runner. You can even give this as a gift, as a mug rug. You do whatever you want with this guy. All right, everybody, you guys have a great weekend. I will see you guys tomorrow to finish the plant lady, and I will show you how to do attic window sashing. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do, is to make all of the setting blocks for the plant lady. So I'm going to work on him, and then tomorrow, that's what we're doing. All right, friends, I will see you tomorrow at 6. I hope you have a great weekend, and I will see you guys later, okay? Bye-bye. Let me know if you have any questions. You can put them in the chat. Give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and I will see you tomorrow. All right, everybody. Bye-bye.